Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Okay, Nakamura has just played bishop f8. It's undeveloping the bishop, and we just saw why it's his only choice. So how does white continue the pressure? First of all, Carlsen played queen f3. He's continuing his light square strategy, and this applies pressure to the weakened h3 pawn, as well as keeping an eye on the d5 pawn, so that white has the option of bishop f5, which is going to trap the black king in the center without weakening this d5 pawn. So it's a nice multi-purpose move. And for now, black is unable to move his bishop, and this presents some problems. So he's forced to try and castle queenside. Naka played queen c7, but now this knight on c2 can aim for the strong c6 outpost instead of its initial plan of going to e3. White could consider that now in order to trade the g2 knight, but in fact Carlsen was willing to play around this knight, and he's better off planting a knight in c6, where it will be a lot more active and useful than this knight here on g2. So there's no point in exchanging it off. So knight b4. Another effect of this move is to apply pressure to the a6 pawn, meaning that black can't castle straight away. White is just remaining a tempo ahead of black all the way through the game. Naka played knight b7, so now came knight c6, which is a great square for the knight, and the black king will now undoubtedly remain trapped in the center. Once again, black now regrets weakening his light squares. He can play knight c5, which is a good outpost, but definitely not as significant as the c6 one. Carlsen, of course, doesn't want to allow the exchanging of his powerful light squared bishop, so he played bishop f5, another piece closing in on the black king, who must be sweating by now. White's advantage is growing steadily. With this move it becomes over a pawn ahead positionally. This move also applies additional pressure to the h3 pawn, which white can now win at his leisure. Naka tried a knight d7, attacking the f6 pawn, so bishop g5 in order to defend, and this is much better than bishop takes h3, after which knight h4 is forced, but black gains a tempo here, and it's better for white instead to press on with his attack. A good example of positional play being superior to grabbing material, as is often the case. So bishop g5, and now rook g8 was Naka's next move, attacking the bishop and moving to the open file, abandoning the h-pawn entirely. This seems to be a little inaccurate though. Better was knight b6, although it's still uncertain how black is meant to continue or what he can try to do whilst white increases the pressure. If black does nothing, then white can either load all his pieces to bear down on the black king and sacrifice the victory, or he can win the h-pawn and advance his own h-pawn for play, or he can aim for the a4 and c4 pawn breaks. So there's just a wealth of great options which whilst black is totally restrained and simply has nothing. It's incredible that Carlsen can create positions like this time and again against the best players in the world. Naka's move, rook g8, allowed a strong response in queen h5 because black has weakened the h-file with the last move, so Carlsen pounces on it immediately and defends his bishop at the same time. There are now some nasty threats hidden in the position, which we'll get to in a moment. So Naka continued with the knight b6 now, so his queen can help defend his king. But white now has a crushing move, and all of a sudden his advantage grows to over 3 pawns. If you want to try and find it, then stop the video now. Bishop e6 is the move, exploiting the pin that the white queen is creating on the f pawn. The point of this move is that it threatens knight e7, where the black rook will have no squares and he'll be forced to give up the exchange, but that'll be the least of his worries, because knight e7 also interferes with the black queen's defense of f7. So, you know, black will be getting mated, queen takes f7 will be coming. And as a result of this, there's now no choice for black. He must play rook takes g5 in order to avoid it. So Carlsen gladly accepts with queen takes g5, and this breaks the pin, so black can now play f takes e6, apparently winning a piece, because after d takes e6 the knight is falling on c6. But it's totally irrelevant, as the creation of the connected passed pawns after d takes e6 is far more significant than having a rook against 3 minor pieces, which is, you know, what the piece situation is after those exchanges. And Naka resigned after the move d takes e6 because he's just totally lost. You know, there's nothing he can do. We'll have a look at that in a moment. First we can look at alternative defenses for black that don't work. Let's say for example he plays queen b7. This is instead of f takes e6. Now it's right for white to snap off the h-pawn with bishop takes h3, because it saves the bishop and it also attacks the knight, so it's coming with tempo. So as long as white retains the initiative when he's winning material, it's much better than simply snapping up material with no threat at the same time. The only square for the knight where it isn't immediately lost is f4, but now comes rook takes f4, where there's no e takes f4 or rook e1 check mates in 4. Queen e7 is forced. It's a laughable move, but it holds out the longest. If instead bishop e7, queen g8 is mate. So queen e7, now rook takes e7, check forces bishop takes e7, now f takes e7. Again with the threat of queen g8, so f5 is forced to block the action of this bishop and give the king an escape square, but now simply bishop takes f5 and mate on g8 next move. So of course black wants to avoid this, and he doesn't take on f4, or recapture on f4, sorry. After rook takes f4 he'll play knight takes d5, just dropping a piece. Obviously it's no good for black. White does have 2 pieces hanging, but black can't win one of them back, because now knight a5 is played, and there are discovered checks threatened with the queen on b7 and the king on h1, but the knight will simply take if black tries that. He can attack it now with queen b6, and now white can return the favor with queen g2, attacking the loose knight on d5, and it's pinned in some respects, because if the knight moves anywhere other than c7 then the rook is dropping, so knight c7 would be best. But now white can let the knight drop with the rook e1, which pins the e-pawn and brings another piece to attack on the king, and black can't take this knight on a5 anyway, or queen c6 is going to be mating. So white stays a full piece up with a raging attack, and needless to say is totally lost. So if we go to the final position now, after f takes e6 Carlsen played d takes e6 and resigned here, because the threat is f7 check, forcing queen takes f7, and you know, black is going to be obviously lost after that. The best move he can play is knight f4, but now of course comes f7 check, forcing queen takes f7, king takes f7, and king d7 is forced. Black can't take the pawn or he gets mated. Rook takes f4 check, e takes f4, queen f5 check, king g8, rook g1 check, bishop g7, knight e7 check, king h8, queen takes h3 check, bishop h6, queen takes h6 is mate. So king d7, but now knight takes e5 check, decisive. D takes e5, rook a d1 check, knight fd5, queen takes e5, and white is winning even more material. So it was a superb game from Carlsen with several instructive points, a great win in just 31 moves, and a great tournament. The candidates tournament is now a little over a month away, and the chess world waits with bated breath to see if Carlsen can make history and claim the right to challenge for the title many believe he's worthy of, world champion. So I hope you enjoyed the game. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.